Capitalists aren't geniuses, they inherit wealth.
They want you to believe it's all about hard work. That every billionaire earned their fortune through genius, innovation, and pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. But here's what they don't want you to know. The vast majority of capitalist wealth isn't earned, it's inherited. And this isn't just some conspiracy theory. This is math. This is history. This is Marx in 2025, and he was right all along. Stay with me because by the end of this video you'll never look at wealth the same way again. The myth of the self-made billionaire. Let's start with the biggest lie sold to the working class, the myth of the self-made billionaire. We're told stories about people who started with nothing and became titans of industry. But when you actually examine the data, a very different picture emerges. Take a look at the Forbes billionaire list. Study after study shows that the majority of the wealthiest people in America, and globally, didn't start from zero. They started on third base and claimed they hit a triple. Elon Musk? His family owned an emerald mine in apartheid South Africa. Jeff Bezos? Got a $300,000 loan from his parents to start Amazon. Bill Gates? Came from a wealthy Seattle family with connections to IBM. But it goes deeper than individual stories. According to recent analysis, approximately 60% of billionaire wealth in the United States comes from inheritance, monopoly power, or crony capitalism, not from innovation or hard work. Only about 40% could even generously be attributed to entrepreneurial activity, and even that often relies on inherited advantages like education, connections, and initial capital. Marx understood this over 150 years ago. In Capital, he explained that capitalism isn't a meritocracy. It's a system where those who own the means of production extract surplus value from those who actually do the work. The capitalist class doesn't exist because they're smarter or work harder. They exist because they own things. The inheritance trap. Here's where it gets even more disturbing. Wealth doesn't just stay concentrated, it compounds across generations through inheritance. This is what economists call dynastic wealth, and it's the antithesis of everything capitalism claims to stand for. The Walton family, heirs to the Walmart fortune, collectively holds more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans combined. Read that again. 6 people have more than 130 million Americans. Did they build Walmart? No. They inherited it. Are they working the floors, stocking shelves, innovating retail technology? No. They're simply collecting dividends from the labor of over 2 million Walmart employees. This is exactly what Marx predicted. He wrote about how capital accumulates in fewer and fewer hands over time, creating an oligarchy that passes wealth down through bloodlines, not merit. The rich get richer not because they're brilliant, but because capital generates more capital and they started with capital. And here's the mechanism that makes it all possible. Our tax system actively encourages dynastic wealth. The estate tax, which was designed to prevent exactly this kind of wealth concentration, has been gutted. In 2025, you can inherit over $13 million without paying a penny in federal estate tax. And the ultra-wealthy use trusts, foundations, and other legal structures to pass down billions while paying minimal taxes. But wait, the innovation argument. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But what about innovation? Don't capitalists drive progress and create jobs? Let me hit you with something that's going to blow your mind. Most major innovations don't come from private capitalists, they come from publicly funded research. The internet? Government-funded. GPS? Government-funded. Touchscreen technology? Government-funded. The algorithms behind Google's search engine? Developed with government grants at Stanford. Even pharmaceutical companies who charge obscene prices for medications rely overwhelmingly on public research. A study found that every single one of the 210 most important drugs approved between 2010 and 2016 were based on publicly funded research. Taxpayers fund the innovation and private capitalists patent it and profit from it. Marx called this primitive accumulation, the process by which capitalists appropriate common resources and publicly created value for private profit. It's happening right now at massive scale, and we're told to celebrate these people as geniuses. The labor theory of value, still relevant. Here's the core of Marx's analysis that remains absolutely vital today: the labor theory of value. This is the idea that the value of a commodity is determined by the socially necessary labor time required to produce it. But under capitalism, workers don't receive the full value of what they produce. The difference between what workers create and what they're paid is surplus value, and that surplus goes to the capitalist class. Think about an Amazon warehouse worker. They might pack hundreds of boxes per hour, generating thousands of dollars in value for Amazon. but they're paid maybe $15 or $20 per hour. Where does the rest go? It goes to shareholders. It goes to executives. It goes to Jeff Bezos's rocket ships. This isn't an accident. This is the system working exactly as designed. Capitalists don't create value. Workers create value. Capitalists simply own the means of production and extract the surplus. And because they have inherited wealth and access to capital, they can continue this extraction generation after generation. The meritocracy illusion. One of capitalism's most powerful ideological weapons is the myth of meritocracy, the idea that anyone can make it if they just work hard enough. But social mobility data completely destroys this narrative. If you're born into the bottom 20% of income distribution in America, you have less than a 10% chance of making it to the top 20% in your lifetime. Meanwhile, if you're born into the top 20%, you have a 40% chance of staying there. The strongest predictor of your economic outcome isn't your intelligence, your work ethic, or your innovative spirit. It's the wealth of your parents. This is what Marx meant when he talked about class reproduction. The capitalist class doesn't stay wealthy because each generation produces geniuses. They stay wealthy because wealth itself generates more wealth, and the system is structured to keep it within the same families. Education is a perfect example. The children of the wealthy attend elite private schools and Ivy League universities, not because they're smarter, but because their parents can afford it and have connections. These credentials then open doors to high-paying jobs and investment opportunities that remain closed to the working class. Now, you don't just have to take Marx's word for it. Modern economists have confirmed his analysis. Thomas Piketty's landmark book, Capital in the 21st Century, uses centuries of data to show that the rate of return on capital consistently exceeds the rate of economic growth. What does that mean in plain English? It means that people who own capital, stocks, real estate, businesses, see their wealth grow faster than people who work for wages. This is Marx's theory of capital accumulation playing out in hard data. Piketty shows that we're returning to levels of wealth inequality not seen since the Gilded Age, or even since the aristocratic societies of the 18th and 19th centuries that Marx was critiquing. We're literally going backward toward a neo-feudal system where a small class of capital owners controls society. And here's the terrifying part: climate change is going to make this worse. As resources become scarcer and disasters more frequent, those with capital will buy up land, water rights, and survival infrastructure. The working class will be left to compete for scraps while billionaires build compounds and private security forces. This isn't science fiction, it's the logical conclusion of unchecked capital accumulation. Stay with me, here's where it gets personal. I want you to think about your own life for a moment. How many hours did you work this week? 40? 50? 60? Now think about how much value you generated for your employer versus how much you were paid. That gap, that surplus value. That's the mechanism of exploitation that Marx identified. Now think about someone like Bernard Arnault, the LVMH luxury goods chairman, one of the richest people on earth. How many hours did he work this week? Even if he worked 100 hours, which he didn't, does he create thousands of times more value than you? Of course not. His wealth comes from owning companies that employ thousands of people whose labor he exploits. This is personal because it's your life, your labor, your time being extracted. Every dollar a billionaire adds to their fortune is a dollar that came from someone's labor that wasn't fully compensated. The ideological apparatus. So why don't more people see this? Why do so many working class people defend billionaires and capitalism? This is where Marx's concept of ideology becomes crucial. The ruling class doesn't just control the means of production, they control the means of idea production. They own the media. They fund think tanks. They endow university chairs. They create an entire ecosystem of ideas that naturalizes capitalism and makes it seem like the only possible system. You've been told your entire life that capitalism equals freedom, that socialism is oppression, that billionaires are job creators, that taxes are theft, that regulation kills innovation. These aren't neutral observations. They're ideology designed to maintain the current system of wealth extraction. Marx called this false consciousness. When the working class adopts the beliefs and values of the capitalist class, even when those beliefs work against their own interests. When a minimum wage worker argues against taxing billionaires, that's false consciousness. When someone living paycheck to paycheck defends inheritance rights for dynasties, that's false consciousness. The alternative, what Marx actually proposed. Now, let's talk about what Marx actually advocated for, because there's a lot of propaganda about this too. Marx wasn't proposing that everyone earns the same amount regardless of contribution. He wasn't advocating for some dystopian nightmare. He was proposing economic democracy, that workers should control the means of production and receive the full value of their labor. Imagine a world where companies were owned by the people who work in them, where major economic decisions were made democratically rather than by a handful of wealthy shareholders, where technological progress meant shorter work weeks and better lives for everyone, not just increased profits for owners. This isn't utopian fantasy. Worker cooperatives exist right now and are often more productive, more stable, and better for workers than traditional capitalist firms. The Mondragon Corporation in Spain is a federation of worker cooperatives with over 80,000 employee owners. Studies show that worker-owned businesses have higher productivity, lower turnover, and more equitable wage distribution. The question isn't whether alternatives to capitalism can work. They demonstrably do. The question is whether the capitalist class will ever voluntarily give up their power and privilege. The class struggle continues. Marx's most famous line is probably this: "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles." And that struggle continues today, even if it looks different than it did in the 19th century. The struggle is in every workplace where workers fight for better wages and conditions while management seeks to maximize profit. It's in every eviction when a landlord throws out a tenant who can't afford rent that's been raised to maximize return on investment. It's in every medical bankruptcy when someone loses everything because healthcare is treated as a commodity rather than a right. But it's also in every strike, every union drive, every mutual aid network, every act of collective resistance. The working class has power, the power to withdraw their labor, the power to organize, the power to demand a better system. But that power is only realized through collective action and class consciousness. The call to action. So what do we do with this information? First, we need to stop worshipping billionaires. Stop believing the mythology. When you see a puff piece about a tech CEO's genius, remember that they likely inherited wealth and extracted surplus value from workers. When someone tells you that billionaires earn their money, hit them with the facts. Second, we need to build working class power. That means joining or forming unions. It means supporting worker cooperatives. It means voting for politicians who will tax wealth and fund public services. It means mutual aid and community organizing. Third, we need to spread class consciousness. Share this video. Have conversations about exploitation and surplus value. Help people see that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed to benefit the capitalist class at the expense of workers. Marx gave us the tools to understand capitalism. It's up to us to use those tools to build something better. Conclusion. Capitalists aren't geniuses. They're not even necessarily harder working than the average person. What they are is the inheritors and accumulators of capital in a system designed to concentrate wealth upward. They extract surplus value from workers' labor and use that surplus to accumulate even more capital, which they pass down to their children, perpetuating a cycle of oligarchy. Marx saw this 150 years ago, and every piece of data we have today confirms his analysis. The question is, what are we going to do about it? If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button and subscribe. The algorithm doesn't favor anti-capitalist content, so we need your engagement to spread this message. Drop a comment with your thoughts on wealth inequality and what you think we should do about it. And remember, another world is possible. But only if we fight for it together. Solidarity forever.